A month or so ago, I finished a book, first in a series of 5, that's ostensibly about the history of book destruction and cultural genocide throughout the trajectory of our species. But there's a little section called anecdotal evidence, which doesn't hew to a historical record, so to speak. And this is a small bit from that small section. It's called My Parents, the Library. I grew up, like many self-contained but isolated children used to, safely cocooned in the rich, eclectic library of my parents. Like other such children, I was lonely but completely unaware of being lonely and so therefore happy. Then when I was 10, I think, we were robbed. Our library was devastated, vandalized. Books like an early edition of Decameron ripped from their covers to be sold as scrap. Over the years, my parents would painstakingly rebuild the library, and we would still steadily hemorrhage books through theft, termites, water, and house moving. I distinctly remember a truck packed full of books leaving Darjeeling, but never reaching our new home in Delhi. As I grew, I watched helplessly as my parents' library unraveled as fast as their marriage, till their eventual separation when I was a teen. My father kept the bulk of the collection, and when he died in 2013, far away from us in the eastern Himalaya, everything vanished again. Every family library is biographical, moving away as it does from the singular collector to the shared reading, owning, and inevitable partitioning amongst its hereditary stakeholders. I had rashly written myself into that twice lost library, and now can no longer be extricated from its clawing melancholy, nor can I dislodge my dead father from it. They are bound up now, grafted and drifting and bearing strange fruit. When I went to the marvellous Wild Goose Memorial Library in London last year, it's a biographical collection, worn bones, wreathed hair. I found that every threadbare patch and frayed edge, moth-eaten specimen and sagging shelf spoke of the richness of life lived even as it rubbed shoulders with death. Jane Wild Goose read me a story written by her daughter for a school assignment, a dark fairy tale set in her own home, populated with her mother and other creatures. She then quoted Proust to me. Memory, she said, is sharper than intellect. I naturally took this as an admonition of my inability to remember the specifics of that conversation or any other, or to even remember what parts of the story had constricted my chest and hitched my breath. Perhaps because, as usual, I was remembering instead of listening. The first fiction we learn is that of our parents as fonts of knowledge and authority, of being the first and the last word. They are the court of first and last appeal, and it is to them we plead our case, sometimes even in their absence. When we reject their jurisdiction and claim to wisdom, it is but another chapter in our often poorly delineated territorial staking, and again we continue the argument in their absence. They are our first fiction by accretion, the repository that no amount of stock clearing can banish. They may recede when we make our own little fictions, but they never completely vanish. The story of our lives begins inevitably with a retelling of theirs. And so, the library of my parents had been painstakingly but consistently built up through years of strife, betrayal, and violence, perhaps because nature and literature remained their only areas of overlap. Not wholly short was their children. Between the breadth of his reading and the depth of hers, a happy medium of inaccurate law and encyclopedic knowledge was found, within which I, as being first on the scene, would lose myself. Foreshadowing the tone of her life with him, my mother's first action after her wedding was to include his name in every book she owned. As the years, books, and misery accrued, she would vanish from the fly-leaves as he steadily diminished, expunged, and obliterated her. Later, he would claim this shared library as his own, having written her out of the pages long ago. And so when he died and our library disappeared for the second time, it took the last of her youth with it. We tell these stories to strangers, as Jane Wild Goose did hers, and I do now, because a biography, like any literary device, can't exist without burrowing into a listening ear. My family's biography is impoverished, written as it was in every lost home, land, and book. The first loss of our library was acute, a brutal vandalism, but still not as bad as the second. I'm unsure if the sense of being orphaned comes from the loss of my father, the mouldering encyclopedia, or the library. With advancing age, obscuring the books I've read and forgotten, read and lost, never known and never read. I find my library shrinking to a tiny spotlit pool. I'm forgetting their faces. I only remember splintering of spines, a smattering of names. Sometimes I see familiar titles on shelves in other libraries and I mark their places. With these poor fragments, I attempt to piece together what we've lost, enlisting family members and former users of the library. But our prejudiced recollections that favor childhood beloveds over other less appreciated but perhaps more meritorious ones make a mockery of my enterprise because they are flat echoes of what I already know. As my family and books scatter, the body parts of this biography disperse before I can write it. All that remains is to invest these yellowing leaves, ingrown toenails, and snaggled teeth with the sanctity of relics, though they are but miserable orphans without a reliquary.